Hey there, YouTube community. It's Hannah. Hi. I wanted to share some new thoughts that have come across my radar recently, just for the pleasure. I love things that hadn't occurred to me before, things that I hadn't thought of it that way before. Framing devices that kind of like help a bunch of stuff like otherwise make sense. That seems confusing. I've been in a discussion. I'm always in discussion with my brother, and he brings so many good ideas, to the table for me. So this is, I guess, the overarching sort of like subject would be white liberal women seem to have exhibited lately, last couple of years, like a particular kind of crazy that's like super intense, and it has this like frenzy to it. It's like this high turned up degree of like emotional intensity, such that there have been numerous collaborations of white liberal women melting down, like with, on purpose. I mean, they're filming themselves doing it, like shrieking, crying, gnashing their teeth, as it were, or like screaming at people, or getting like so nuts that they end up like getting fired from their job as teachers or whatever. And it's like funny, and it's alarming, and it's sad, and it's also just like, whoa, it's not like being kind of crazy. It's my dog digging, like a bunch of different ways. It's kind of like it exhibits the same kind of like mania or frenzy, and it's like, what's that about? And so that's the overall heading, but I want to like drill. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed this. I think it's impossible not to notice at this point if you're like on the internet at all. And probably we've formed our own conclusions about that for the most part, but and so have I. But yeah, some like interesting different thoughts that hadn't occurred to me before, apropos of my brother. So imagine a situation I talked in one of my last videos about how our human civilization right now is kind of like represents like a paper thin veneer on top of an otherwise sort of like howling wilderness of what has otherwise been the human experience, red in tooth and claw. I kind of don't like that term, because it turns out there's a whole lot more like cooperation on the part of the animal kingdom than what we've been led to believe, now that everybody has cameras and phones and stuff like that. But still, just to sort of, generalize, like howling wilderness, paper thin veneer of human civilization. And then on top of that, irregular warfare, cognitive warfare, kind of moving us out of what the last couple like world wars, and just like we're still in the time frame of like kinetic warfare and kinetic conflict, but like it's also moved as humans, into the realm of irregular cognitive warfare, info warfare, that's been going on for, turns out, kind of a long time, but it's really like intensified lately in a way that I think lots of us have noticed. If you follow my channel, you're probably somebody who noticed that we seem to live in a matrix that seems designed to make us fat and sick and gay and dumb and poor and low muscled and under T, low muscled. Did I say that right? Anyway, it doesn't matter, So it's like, imagine a situation, at any time in history, certainly throughout all the time of human history, where the the threat has come through the male. And so now that's the father, we've got the mother, and we've got the kids, and the protection of the children is obviously the ultimate prerogative, and so the threat could be so many threats, but let's say it's some kind of physical threat. So the male is obviously the first line of defense in the protection of a family and the protection of women and children, societally, generally speaking. So let's say the threat has come through him and he's out there dead. And so now we've got the mom and the kids. And it's not like, she's not even really a plan B line of defense. Like, women aren't optimized for this at all. Like, as I've discussed in other videos, it's like we're unique in the mammal kingdom in terms of like the degree of the adaptation physically and psychologically, emotionally and hormonally, that human females have to the degree to which we've deviated from the male baseline is so dramatic among otherwise the mammal kingdom, because we have this, you know, project of the big brain smart babies, you know, becoming like the apex like entity on this planet. And the degree to which we have to kind of like make this compromise between retaining enough skeletal, musculoskeletal viability to like walk and run and do all the things, but to also be able to birth these one at a time, very helpless for very long, very big brain babies. Childbirth itself being like an incredibly deadly process, which has killed millions of women, if not more. You know, so like, whereas in the animal kingdom, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's like there's a litter, and then the mom can kind of stash them and go hunt, like do things. And whereas for us, it's like this, it's like this all in process of, first of all, childbirth is like deadly. Second of all, fucking helpless baby. Third of all, it's like we all essentially give birth, like all babies are essentially born like premature, like 3 months premature. If you really look at like it should be like a year-long gestation, but then every woman would die on childbirth, so we wouldn't even be a race, we wouldn't even be a species, you know. So this incredibly like helpless being that's helpless for so much longer than other little mammals are, not up and running for a really long time. So, you know, the musculoskeletal, also emotional, also psychological adaptations that have to be just status quo for human females in order for all of this whole experiment of being the apex entity on the planet to perpetuate in the long-term sort of like resource partnership that is necessary between a human male and female, which is not otherwise the case, you know, on the planet with animals. So like in this scenario where the threat has already come through the male, and what I'm saying, she's not even like set up to the extent that in another species, like the female, I mean, the male wouldn't even be there in the first place because he doesn't need to be, he already pieced out. So it's not just that she's like a plan B line of defense for the children. It's like everything has gone so catastrophically wrong for her to be in that situation to begin with, that it's like everything must just be tits up, you know, everything must be tits up for this to be happening at all. And she's not optimized to offer a response physically or psychologically. Like almost every man I know, no matter how much of a chairborne ranger he might be, or a desk jockey, or maybe he has an active job, or maybe not, or maybe he's, you know, actively involved in like strength or athleticism, or maybe totally not. But like, I kind of don't know any man that isn't like a big part of his sort of like bandwidth is taken up with imagining what he would do if he was standing in line at the gas station and a bear walked in, or just like men like play these threats in their mind. Like they're on a certain level, like preparing to deal with a threat, like all the time. They're thinking about it, you know, and women not so much, or like in different ways. Perhaps emotionally. So sorry, that could be a really funny tangent, but I'm not going to take it. I'm going to resist. Okay. So in the event that this has occurred, now there is a response that she's going to offer, which is going to be a frenzy, like an absolute spike of emotional intensity. Like it's going to be like in the story of Dionysus and the Maenads, you know, how the Maenads, they just went like loco, and they're like eating human flesh. Like they just like go crazy. A frenzy. Like this is going to be that mother's response. And it's an aligned response. It's the only response that she has. And you do see examples of this in the animal kingdom. Actually, I remember watching a couple compilations of like hens, and hens, we just think about chicken as like a flavor of food that you can eat, but like hens in the animal kingdom exemplify the traits and the characteristics of like really conscientious motherhood so beautifully and so dramatically, to the extent that a mother hen, she will mother any species, like any species of like helpless young that she comes across. She's gonna mother them, and she mothers them like, and her hens too, like so aggressively, you know, like she is like rounding them up and like getting them going and like leading them around, and they're following her. And like hens are just like beautiful creatures when you look at them through the lens of like amazing mother skills, you know. So I've seen compilations of hens, for instance, backing off a predator, like a much larger, much more dangerous and with more predatory resources than she has, from her young, by going into this frenzy. And it's just like, I will kill us both. They're just like, blah, you know, they just go fucking nuts. And they will back off like massive predators. I'm sure it doesn't work in every case, but it's like they have this thing, they bring it to bear, and they just see red. Like it's and it's an incredibly aligned, valuable response, you know? So it's kind of like, back to the subject of like why have the white liberal women gone so crazy and in this like frenzied, intense way that they seem to like kind of be a monolith in this? It's not like they're all kind of like separately going crazy different ways. Like there's just kind of like a lot of this, of filming themselves just being crazy, like screaming at the phone, like screaming at people, you know, or you're just like, God damn. So this is the idea that my brother floated across my radar, you know, and he's been looking at the comments on different kinds of posts and stuff like that. It's like, I think what you know, what I try to do, what hopefully we all try to do, is to like give each other grace. And one of the things that you can do interpersonally to give somebody grace is to be like, I want to understand the circumstances of, let's say, your childhood environment, because I can see that you have some like adaptations that now that you're an adult, they have become like maladaptations. Like this isn't working for you. And I can also see that you're an amazing person. So like, I want to understand like what your incentive landscape looked like when you had no control over and you had a tiny little kid, you know, to like get a picture of that. And that's what a lot of, you know, the study of developmental trauma and relational psychology and stuff like looks into, all that attachment theory, all those kinds of things. So that's a way that, I mean, that might not work in terms of like continuing a relationship with that person or whatever, but that's a way that we can give each other grace, and to give ourselves grace too. Like many times, I'm sure I've experienced this, I'm sure you've experienced it too, where you're like, I feel like I'm kind of doing something like involuntary, like I can't like not offer this response, and like I know that this is kind of self-sabotaging, and I just like get that there's something like deep for me here, you know. So you can kind of like look back at your own history and try to understand yourself that way, and understand your own attachment style that way, and your own like maladaptations, which in childhood they weren't maladaptations, they were adaptations. They were the only adaptation that was available to you, obviously, or else you wouldn't have done it, you know. So like, you can give others grace, you can give yourself grace in that way. So in a world where we got people acting really crazy, it's like, okay, let's try to give them grace too. And yeah, I really like this train of thought, because it's kind of like, I mean, men get really frustrated with women, women get really frustrated with men, women get frustrated with other women, men get frustrated, you know, people politically, all this, right? Races, religions, just like, what a hotbed. But if a whole bunch of people kind of one demographic are like acting a particular crazy way, it's like, what if there's something that's like deeply functional, it has been deeply functional and important in their hardwiring, that maybe looking back at the animal kingdom could give us a little insight as to that or whatever. And like, what if that is temporarily, excuse me, Jesus, like that was a crazy fly, like moved that adaptation or that impulse, that instinct, like out of what should be its like natural circumstances, and like into an environment where that's the reason you're seeing like this kind of flare up, you know? Because I think that when we talk about communism, it's kind of like the idea of a communist society is that like the parents are sort of in the background for children. The children, it's like the state should be your parent, right? The state should be your parent. And breaking up, this is why people are so fierce about the nuclear family. And this is why the contest, but communism isn't going to straight out just like call itself communism, because we would all reject it. So instead it goes by many, many guises, you know, and also like demonizes any movement against it as some kind of like fascist or racist or whatever kind of ideology, you know, like all the manipulation of language. But I mean, basically, like any kind of like communistic creep is going to, by its very necessity, like attack the cohesiveness of the nuclear family, because it needs to break that up. So the children need to have the state as their parents, and it's almost like the parents need to have the state as their children too, in a way, right? So, you can just like take all of the linguistic warfare about who's calling who what, and you can just like move it to the side and be like, what side of any kind of debate is like for the nuclear family, and what side of any kind of debate is like against the nuclear family? Like literally is just like an acid test, like a that's a stiff test right there, and there are many valuable and viable critiques of the nuclear family as it's played out. It's not that that's like somehow above reproach. Like, it's got some fucking problems, so like a constructive critique of the nuclear family, I'm not like putting that to the side, but it's like, still, I mean, if you want to like sniff out communism, then just look at that, So the whole project of like the state becoming the parents, supplanting the parents' role in children's lives in a very communistic way is going very well. I mean, it's not going well for us, but it's going well for the powers that be because of the school, public school like indoctrination system, which to do that, they had to get all the women into the workforce, which was, the Rockefeller Foundation, like advancing the project, the feel good project of feminism, to get all the women into the workforce to double the tax base. I mean, it's like twofold, now it's like you've doubled the tax base, you have like that many more, domesticated cattle to tax on your tax farm, and now you've got the children primarily being raised by the state, right? So so I think that's probably old hat for most of us. Like, I'm sure that's not the first time like you thought about that, or the first time I've thought about it. But the thing I hadn't really given a lot of thought to is like the state sort of standing in, or something else standing in for children, because both men and women certainly are like deeply aligned. It's like hardwired into us to like procreate and start families. But for women, that shit is like really, really intense, and the project of the last couple decades has certainly been a propaganda enterprise to dissuade women, and I'm going to say particularly white women. I'm not just making this up. Like, I can access, I'm old enough to remember all the kinds of like messaging about this. I'm 49. So to dissuade women, and particularly white women, from having children, and to frame that as, on the one hand, kind of like an empowerment move, and on the other hand, it's like a selfish move to have children. It's selfish. So it's empowering not to. It's disempowering to do the traditional family thing, and it helps. It's like that's an easy sell because, like, we evolved a society where we completely like demonetized women's labor while men's labor is monetized, in terms of traditional roles, and then on top of that broke the money, so that it's extra fucked up. So it's like it's not a hard sell to convey to women that like having a family and being a mom and a wife is disempowering. Money is power, like money is our abstracted like unit of exchange for what would otherwise be a meritocracy and all the skills that we would offer, so and then when I said, like specifically for white women, I mean, this isn't something I was particularly trying to track on. I was just blasted with this, like my whole, I don't know about my teenage years. I'm going to say, like, I graduated high school in 94. I'm going to say definitely in college. Like that's where they're going to get you on stuff. All kinds of like info charts. This beyond like in the kinds of magazines that you would just get like at the grocery store. And I'm not even talking like I was taking some 500 level ass class and like we went really into a thing. I'm just saying like very, very ambiently just out there that one single child being born in the first world was essentially taking the resources away from, I don't know, like 36 other children, you know? And so just like, how selfish is it for you to do that when now it's just that much harder for them, you know? Um, all of this, right? And so, and many people, like, I'm not the first one to say this. It's like we have, because of feminism and because of broken money, and because of the constant like attacks on the nuclear family, you know, which if you can break apart nuclear families, that's great, but if you could prevent them from even forming, that's even better, right? For a slide into communism. So yeah, like a lot of disinformation messaging about like don't have kids, don't have kids. So, you know, so we got lots and lots, like when we look at this sort of population of like liberal white women like acting really crazy, it's kind of like, okay, so they're a demographic that's like squarely in the crosshairs, myself included, you know. I have some other differences, but like squarely in the crosshairs of this campaign to prevent the formation of nuclear families and the having of children, which there are like critiques that can be made, like constructive critiques on all that. Again, I'm not pretending that there aren't, but okay. So then if you have a bunch of women and they have like a prime directive that's just like built into them, because of course it would be, you know, anybody, like we descended from people that had this prime directive like hardwired in and had the survival skills somehow to like rise to the occasion, because otherwise, you know, they would have died and not lived long enough to reproduce. So it's like, of course we all have that hardwired in, like pretty much, you know. So then you disenfranchise them like en masse, you know, collectively from having children. Then they have a spiritually like unemployed energy that it needs to go somewhere, right? It needs to go somewhere. And what mothers do generally is they are the moral arbiters of their children's development. Of course they are, you know? And it's kind of like, where, you know, I think maybe you, like certainly like me, like this has been confusing, coming from them like pretty hardcore, where it's like, the sort of more, I guess, like constitutional or like right-leaning kind of position, take any issue in the last like 5-6 years, has been like, if you want to get vaccinated, then get vaccinated, but you can't unconstitutionally mandate that everyone like, just simply do the thing you want to do. And I will simply do the thing that I want to do. And it's like, somehow that just like, they don't sprechen that. They're like, everyone has to do this. Like, this is the right thing to do. And everyone, la-di-da-di, everybody has to do it. And like, that's been so maddening and so just like, I mean, and it's trickled down all the way to like my personal experience, where I had another blog project that was actually like pretty successful, and I ended up kind of I collapsed it like Building 7, but it was called Smart Sexy Vegan, and I had it for a long time and I was really active in it, and I had readers from all different countries, and it was great. It was like such a great project. Anyway, there's like a girl I know that when we first knew each other, like there wasn't so much going on, where we found ourselves on different sides of the political spectrum or something like that. But then everything happened, and she pulled really hard left and I pulled really hard right. And I would just write about and she would like come on to my blog all the time, but she was like direct messaging me, and she was just like, you have to stop thinking this way. like she couldn't like stop reading it, I guess. Like, she was just like, it was like a moth to a flame. And I think a lot of us I mean, I wouldn't spend so much time with this, but I know many people that have experienced like some degree of something like this. It's even like happening a little bit on my YouTube channel with, I talk about Bitcoin, and then like XRP person comes over and is like, you have to stop talking about Bitcoin and like start talking about XRP. And I was like, I specifically made a video about how I don't think people should buy XRP. So like, I was like, just talk about it on your own channel. Like, I'll just talk about Bitcoin and you talk about XRP. And they're like, no, you have to talk about XRP on your channel. And I'm like, no, I don't. So that's kind of like what was happening with this girl, where she like couldn't stop reading my blog. And we used to be friends, so it was kind of sad, but like, she couldn't stop reading my blog, and she couldn't stop like scolding me for wrongthink. And it just, it's not worth going into, but I was just like, if that's the shit that you believe, then write your own blog. I'm over here writing my blog. You just write your own. Like, what? How? How can you not figure out to just do your own thing? Just build your own platform. Fuck's sake. But, you know, I mean, this is like the level of crazy that I'm talking about. And then in mass collectively, it's like a constant scolding from these, like they are here to like chew gum and like scold the fuck out of all of us, and they are all out of gum. It's like so much scolding coming from the liberal white women. Everyone's exhausted with it, you know? And they're like very unhappy and like mentally unwell. Like they're very, very mentally unstable. They're very fragile. Like they're just like in a crisis. Like they're in an emergency, you know? It's just like hard to see. Cause like I'm, you know, I'm not liberal, but like I'm a white woman. I'm like, those are like my sisters, you know? I'm like, that is so cringe. Like just let people do stuff. Holy shit, you know? But right, if you take a generation or two, or I don't know how many generations we're really talking here, and like kind of fuck them out of the experience of being mothers. I'm sure some of them are crazy and they're mothers too, but like kind of generation like fuck women out of that, and then they still have this like powerful thriving like instinct to sort of like be the moral arbiter of like you know, the progress of, you know, I have kids now, so it's got to be, I guess, just all of us or whatever. Maybe that's kind of where that energy comes from. And then they're dealing with like an warfare landscape that they're not sophisticated enough. Sorry, it sounds like I'm being shitty, but I'm not. Like, apparently they're not sophisticated enough to like get that aspect of it, you know? So they're just kind of like, oh my God, they're like lambs to the slaughter, you know, of like psyop after psyop, right? And so, okay. But then it's, right, like that question of like that level of like frenzy, like they are like, I will kill us both, you know? And it's like, even, I'm trying to give grace here. I'm not trying to shit talk, I'm trying to give grace. It's like, I bet that's where that comes from. Like, this feels like an existential threat. I mean, they're not shy about telling us this. Like, every fucking thing feels like an existential threat to them. And I'm over here like, I agree. There are like so many existential threats right now, but that, like, they're not that one. Like, that's okay. Like, stop looking at like cats looking at lasers, and like look at the hand that's like operating the laser pointer here, you know. And I'm sure I'm psyoped too. And there's like, God, it's like such a wild environment now, you know, where it's like there's for any movement there's the opposition, and then you just have to know that there's the controlled opposition, and it's like you could be on a side and other people are on the other side, and so like somebody who like disagrees with your perspective could like pretend to be on your side and say something that's like just beyond reasonable and is like inflammatory to the point that it discredits your side and makes everybody look kind of crazy, and then the other side responds to that like we knew you guys were this way. And then like it's really easy for bad actors and people acting not in good faith, which, hello, they're everywhere, you know, and they're paid like $7,000 a post by Israel, for instance, you know, like to like just get in and be the controlled opposition and like inflame things so it's like the possibility of having some kind of like reasonable debate that is in good faith is just like kind of incinerated like right off the bat because of purposeful manipulation, you know. Like, it's just wild. It's just like a wild environment right now. So I by no means do I wake up every morning and think like, thank God all my opinions are right. It's like, that's why I've kind of moved from like what I learned in school, you know, like what like about research and careful research and stuff like that, like cite your sources and everything, and sort of like I mean, if you've ever met a liberal and argued with them, or if you are one yourself, it's like they are really smart. God damn, they're so smart. And they can pretty much like defeat you in any argument. And they know more, and they have more facts to bring to bear about any particular argument, okay? Where they fail is that they can't see the forest for the trees. So they'll like burn you down about like an argument about any particular tree, but then you're like, but the forest, and they're like, what forest, you know? They're like, they're specialized apparently, because I mean that's all the arguments that I've ever had with liberals, like, which I try not to do, like that's just how it goes. And so to the extent that anything is kind of like a broad spectrum, also informed by common sense, like pattern recognition thing. This is why conspiracy theorists are always like accused of, being the pattern recognizers. It's like, that's what you have to do now. Like, you have to consume, you don't have to do this. Honestly, just get off the internet and touch grass and like raise kids and chickens or whatever. That would be better. But if you're an internet person, what you have to do, the maneuver you have to do is to consume large amounts of information in like a somewhat shallow way, because of, you just don't have time. You have to like live your life and stuff, and like use pattern recognition. Like, that's what gets you out of the weeds. And what the liberals do, and what I was taught to do in school, is like literally the opposite of that, to become sort of like specialists of knowledge and information, to the point that you can win any argument on that particular subject, and you can still get like hosed down by a whole thing happening that you didn't even notice. So like Scott Adams is a super famous guy who's unfortunately in a real struggle with cancer right now, turbo cancer, as it turns out, like probably related to getting vaccinated. And he was on the the pro vaccines. Like, obviously he got vaccinated when all that came out, and me and everybody else was like, whoa, like, this is sketchy as fuck. And then all the liberal people were just like, how dare you think that you know more than my doctor, and like, this is science, and you're a science denier, and you're a vaccine denier, blah 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 blah. All that was playing out. And like, Scott Adams was, and he's a hyper intelligent dude, which the liberals are. He was like, I think that's crazy, and I'm gonna get vaccinated, and he did. And like, then, well before he personally experienced any of what has unfortunately turned into like a pretty huge problem related to that, like, he already, like, he at some point saw the forest instead of just the trees. And then he's such a gift to humanity, because he has such a big platform, and he's one of the few people that's able to like change his mind and to admit that he was wrong, and to actually solicit from others. Like, he was like, how did you guys know? And like, I did so much research, and like, I don't know that he said he did so much research. I guess he just like ambiently picked up on the marketing or whatever. But like, he was like, how did you guys know? And then people, explained. I mean, for us, we were just like, that's like obviously sketchy. Like, like, this is an obvious manipulation. I don't even, like, down to the point of like, I don't even know what's in that fucking needle. But if this many people are trying this hard to get me to do a thing that's free, then, I mean, if the product is free, then it turns out that you're the product, like, just that kind of like situational awareness. And for some reason, sorry, I need to wrap this up because I'm like really getting off in the weeds here, but it's like, liberals are really smart. Okay. They're super, super smart. So like, I like entertaining the thought of like, maybe all of like these behaviors that have been so just sort of like, wow, specifically on the part of like white liberal women, they probably represent in different ways at different times things that are like very aligned for people and very aligned for women, and that there's been some kind of like shell game switch up that happened such that, this type of response is being elicited. And it's like unfortunate, because now it's a maladaptation. It wasn't before, but now it's a maladaptation that is unfortunately so sort of brittle and like hysterical that it's very difficult for them to kind of like internally get some objectivity and like space and sort of like sit with that, as they say, like sit with it, So I hope all my fellow white sisters a very merry, like, sit with it, and maybe like some pattern recognition and just, I don't know, that kind of like frenzy, that kind of hysteria which is certainly well placed in the event of the mother hen protecting her chicks from like a huge ass bald eagle, or, like the threat already came through the man and already came through the front door. Then it's like, yeah, that's the time to do that. Like, what else do you have to bring to bear? I think it's almost like God or evolution like gave us that as a last ditch response, like, right? um you know, and you can't talk about like white liberal women without talking about weaponized empathy. So it's like, of course, that's, I mean, that's absolutely what's going on. um so it's also kind of like weaponized appropriate defense response, you know, in terms of like the frenzy, right? Sucks. Anyway, I need to I really appreciate all y'all's engagement. I'm trying to get back to everybody's comments all the time. I need to pack for my trip today, and there may be a temporary interruption in output, but like I'm just having the time of my life with these videos. Like I really, really enjoy like new thoughts, you know, and it almost kind of seems like we have blocks of thoughts. And so I've noticed this with my videos where it's like I kind of have a block of thought that I'll offer, and I clear the cache on that, and then I receive a new block of thought that's sort of like a deeper insight, like that I don't think I could have like had room for it before, because I was, you know, so that like this is a very, very valuable process for me. And I really like thought connecting with others in the world. And so like the comments that you've left and just the views and stuff like that, I really appreciate it, because this is super rewarding, you know, for me. So yeah, it might be a little bit, I got to travel, but I hope you all have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. And I definitely welcome and solicit your comments. Okay, bye.